on a bus to journey onward by Master Atlanta, chapter 79. Who we are. This can't be what the schools are teaching these students, right? I mean, what are we expecting? We send these children to schools to learn how to fight monsters, and of course, they're going to think they can wield that kind of strength without restraint. But this is a rare incident that hasn't happened many times before. Isn't it a bit of a reaction to right and punish all the schools because of the actions of just one person? Yes, but it isn't a rare case for huntsmen or hunters to use their skills and training to hurt people weaker than them. This accident with this Yang Xiaolong shows this kind of brutality being developed in someone who should be learning restraint and control. What are we to expect from the schools in the future where one of their supposed best and brightest to maim someone for everyone to see? Or whatever our personnel thoughts may be. What do you think should be done with this young huntress? I think that the least that needs to be done is suspension for at least a year, or explosion. Fuck them! Kiba slammed his scroll down and then sees through his teeth as his lips curled up. I can't take listening to these assholes bad-mouthing her like this. They're talking about her like she's some kind of wild sociopath looking for a chance to hurt people. Kiba, quiet down. Why? Aren't you mad about this too? Of course I am. Then covered his mouth and whispered while pointing to the wall. But you're loud enough that they can hear you. Kiba's eyes widened as he remembered that the walls weren't thick, and they shared one between the room and Team RWBY's. The Nozaka kept his mouth shut, but his shoulders continued to shake, and he gripped his fist so tightly his knuckles went white. Tenten grabbed his shoulder and tried to ease his anger. I know this is frustrating. I want to go outside and scream at the people to stop, but that isn't gonna help her. She's being helped by the teachers in general and they're trying to ease the pressure off of her. The news outlets around the world would demand answers from the teacher staff and those in charge. They were also beginning to get an interview with Yang, claiming she attacked Mercury out of some xenophobic outrage against Mitchell, or because she had been paid off to cripple him in front of everyone. Reporters and cameramen had already tried to sneak onto campus, and Yang had to silence her scroll from all the terrible notifications being sent to her. It was bad enough that she was being blamed for all of this, but now she was banned from the rest of the tournament and being forced to stay in her room for the remainder of the festival. The fact that their lively, energetic friend was being treated like this was heartbreaking. How could this happen? Not to look devastated by what was happening, his ears drooping atop his head. I mean, Yang has always been quick to raise her fist, but she isn't cruel and she wouldn't hurt a defenseless person. Did Mercury say something to her or do something to her? There has to be a reason. There could be any number of reasons. Sasuke was sat on his bed, watching Yang and Mercury's match on repeat silently as he tried to find some clue or indication of anything. But once again, he was just watching footage he and some 100,000 other people had seen before. Yang said he attacked her and GBTL, but the broadcast shows nothing like that. I'm not sure if it was nerves that made her act like that, or if it was something else. But the fact is that it happened. Everyone saw it. Everyone is watching it, and despite our protest, Sasuke's scroll changed to the next video, and his teammates listened to the more moral sounds of grim rampaging. The people are unsettled, and the Grim have taken advantage of it. It had been the biggest effort in the hours since the incident to try and calm the public down. There were announcements to try and calm the soldiers being ordered out to protect surrounding settlements, but the shock and horror from watching Yang brutalize Mercury had caused the Grim around Vale to rise up. It was happening around the whole world. People witnessing the fight and its resulting horror for themselves, but it was worse in Vale. The constant news cycle repeating the fight and all the reports talking about how Yang should be punished certainly wasn't helping things. Fuck! Naruto cursed as his hand tightening his hair and shook his head. What the hell are we supposed to do now? I think the only thing we can do is focus. Tenten walked over and placed a hand on Sasuke's scroll, lowering it into his lap before it turned off. She looked between her teammates with a sad expression, but tried to show them a smile. We can't just sit in here or dwelling on what happened. That's totally counterproductive to what emergency broadcasts are saying. We have to get out of here and try to get our minds off of things. But Yang, it's already confined to her room for the rest of the tournament. There's nothing we can do about that without going to Professor Osman or Admiral Arnold. Plus, I think it would be better for her to stay in and get away from people that would never stop asking what happened. Then this logical answer didn't do much for easing their anger towards the people harassing their friend, but they did take their minds off of the fact that they would only make things worse trying to stand up to them. So let's go out, walk along the fairgrounds, have some fun, and prepare for tonight. Okay? The boys of Team Noctix looked between each other before tentative smiles and easing shoulders started to appear. A small chuckle escaped Sasuke as he looked at his partner. We are lucky to have you on our side. Don't have to tell me twice. So okay, we go out and take our minds off things. But if we run into any of those people trying to press us for stories on Yang, I'm gonna hit them, and damn the consequences. Well, we'll cross the bridge when we reach it. Hunting. Once I would have finished explaining the situation to them and how they would handle it going forward, the members of Team Ruby not restrained to the room mulled over whether they should stay or head out to catch some air. It was only at Yang's urging that they go and have fun on her behalf that they finally left. Although with sorrowful looks on their faces, and not before Ruby gave her the biggest hug imaginable. She wasn't going to let her screw up or ruin the fun for her friends. She refused, but honestly, she wanted them gone because she didn't want anyone around at the moment. Curled up at the foot of Blake's bed and softly stroking Swice for as he rested in her lap. Yang tried to clear her mind and focus on anything else she could. There were no broadcasts to listen to, and her scroll was turned off so she wouldn't get any messages. It might have been selfish, but she wanted to block out what was happening outside right now. But what was happening because of her? She just didn't get it. She saw him yell and move to attack. Mercury leaped off the ground and sailed through the air with his leg out, ready to hit her and knock her aura down to zero. And she knew what she saw, but then again, everyone else knew what they saw too. And when she looked at the playback, she found it difficult to deny the footage. It was enough to make her feel like she was going crazy. You had to stand up and speak for yourself when cornered. But when the whole world points at you and calls you a monster, does denying it make you resilient or insane? She heard Noctix arguing to the walls earlier about what was happening. Honestly, she felt relieved to hear them still support her and have her back at this point. Even General Anwul was helping her, even though his restriction on her movement and her disqualification from the tournament may have soured her opinion of him at the moment. She knew the situation was terrible, but how she was being treated was shit. This whole thing was shit. Yang felt bad enough for screwing up and getting them disqualified from the tournament after almost a year of having themselves up for victory. The idea that people outside the school were being pressured by Grim because of what she did left the pit in her stomach. Ruby was being the greatest little sister in the world, coming to her defense immediately and making sure she was feeling okay despite all the people talking about her. In truth, she knew her little sister was disappointing in her and how she had ruined the chances of winning the tournament. This was all she had been looking forward to for months, and with a single punch, she ruined it all. Weiss was proving herself the heiress to a company familiar with scandals and public relations. She was coming to her and telling her they were going to find a way to fix it. When she said that, she wasn't talking about calling her family's legal team for plans or advice. She meant that she and her teammates were not going to give up or leave her side. Hearing Weiss say things were going to be fine actually gave her hope. Blake showed her support and wanted the best for her, but Yang could clearly see the doubt in her eyes. Honestly, despite how much it hurt, she had to say her partner was reacting the most normally. Ruby was defending her sister that'd be with her for life, and Weiss was protecting a friend that was being hounded by the public. But Blake was different. She was seeing how her partner had attacked someone who didn't deserve it and was denying it entirely. She had spent her life fighting with the White Fang, but then left when they started to do terrible crimes and making up excuses for themselves. Was that what she was doing, or was she just twisting things around in her head to defend herself? Anwood said that people in the heat of battle sometimes did things that they never would do under regular circumstances. She knew Mercury attacked her, but in the end she blew out his kneecaps without saying a word. Was she wrong? Was she insane? When Yang looked down, it was to see little droops of water resting on the tips of Swice for on her lap. Hey, little dragon, you hanging in there? Yang looked over to see her uncle had arrived without her even knowing, and when she turned to look at him, it was to give him a complete view of her red-rimmed eyes. And when he knows, she sniffled and wiped her face before she answered in a voice much weaker than she'd have liked to sound it. Hey, girl. The older husband sighed and walked over. He knelt down by her eyes and pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. Without warning, she started to wipe her eyes and nose with it. You look like a best kid. Hey. Despite Yang's protest, the Crow continued to awkwardly and rather doubtfully clean her face. So Swice scrambled out of her lap and she flailed her arms around while her face was filled with cloth. She finally knocked her hands away and rubbed her face before fronting at her uncle. I'm not a kid anymore. Hey, I changed your diapers when you were a baby and tied your pigtails as a brat. That gives me the right to call you kid when you're 60 and a grandmother. Pfft, Yang scoffed. When I'm 60, you'll probably just be some senile old man stuck in a home, and me and we'll be fine for you. Despite how she felt, Yang found a smile and giggled. We'll leave you to harass nurses and mess yourself in the night. Yep, and in my fugue states, I'll still be talking to whomever will listen about this little punk I knew who wet the bed until she was. Crow blocked the playful evil little studio punch aimed at it for his head. I'm just saying, try to play me and I'll play you right back. Yang giggled and snorted despite herself. After a moment, her mirth faded and her current circumstances reminded her where she was. She looked up and noticed Crow's smile had disappeared for a more sympathetic expression. What are you doing here? It should be pretty obvious what I'm doing here. And Crow lazily answered, I can't walk a damn 5 minutes without someone bringing up you and the boy and the fight and the worst tragedy to ever happen and blah blah blah. I'm kind of taking that in stride, aren't you? Well, I think I'd care more if any of the people yapping in my ear mattered to me. She had a little chuckle at that, just like Crow, blunt as hell, but at least he was honest. Taking a deep breath and cursing internally as she felt her eyes water again, Yang shook her head. I think I'm going crazy, Uncle Crow. Yeah, I can see that. He looked down and saw the annoyed expression his darling little niece was giving him for that response. What? If you want me to just say you're not and ease your worries a little, just say so. No. Yang groaned, regretting the admiration she had shown for her uncle's forwardness just seconds ago. Just be honest. Honestly, it's hard to argue with what we've seen, kiddo. I know you say he attacked you, but watching the footage is brutal. Yang just slapped into her hands and wanted to scream. The only reason she didn't was that she's scared Suai, and right now he was her only companion in this stupid house arrest. Crow walked over to the window. If it makes you feel any better, you're hardly the first person this has ever happened to. It'll be tough for a little while, but things will let up. That's not making me feel any better. For an uncle, you suck at giving advice to your family. How many people were going to sneak into her room? Of course, you had to drop in. Crow groaned as White jumped to his paws and ran up to meet his new friend. You know, I can't find it appropriate at all for a teacher to drop in on a student's room like this. Well, since the tournament is already on its way, my curriculum is up, so I don't think I'm even an advisor anymore. Minto informed his old associate as Crow rolled his eyes. Despite the rigid attitude towards each other, Minto showed a kind and understanding look when he turned to Yang. How you feeling? Like I'm the worst person in the world? If you were the worst person in the world, you wouldn't be feeling anything about what's happening, so I think that just makes you a young lady that's made a mistake. It didn't do much to raise her spirits, but Yang certainly did feel a little better hearing that it was just a mistake, even if it was one that was costing a lot of people. That's what I was trying to say, but you two totally interpreted it wrong. Crow said from the side as he looked at Yang. People make mistakes all the time. You aren't the first, you aren't the last, and you definitely ain't the worst. People just tend to blow this kind of stuff out of proportion for the sake of attention and viewership. The truth is that this mishap may stick with you for a long time. Yang wilted from Minto's honesty. So now you'll have to do a lot of work helping people and showing them just the kind of person you really are, not just the mistake you made. Are you ready for that? Yang rubbed her eyes again and sealed herself with a nod. Good. You really do know how to just interject yourself into family matters, don't you? Minto's smile faded as Crow grumbled and pushed off the windowsill to walk around the room. These next few days are gonna suck, kid. But you're tougher than most anyone I know. So I'm betting you'll get back up from this and be the bright little firecracker you've always been. Thanks, Uncle Crow. She smiled a little more honestly. That means a lot. No problem, kiddo. Crow smiled down at his niece, ruffling her hair despite her quiet protest. He smiled down at her as she stopped trying to slip away from his hands, and instead reluctantly accepted his gesture. When he spotted the faintest hint of a smile, he chuckled. You know this moment would be perfect if you didn't have some noisy asshole watching us. If I wasn't here, you'd still be trying to act cool and hurting her feelings. Mimi, you have no idea what I'd be doing right now. Seriously, can you stop calling me that? grow some stubble, and I might just consider it. The two men stopped arguing when they heard a light giggle from Yang. She grinned and shook her head. From here, it almost sounds like you two are old friends. This is a serious misconception you're having, Miss Xiaolong. Yeah, kiddo, you might need it to get a checkup. Yang looked at Minato. Were you always acting like this with his team, Teach? Well, I guess Crow and I never really settled our grievances. He looked over and was surprised to see the Raggedy Man finally agree with him on something. Taeyang and I were always nice to each other, but we're never really that close. Summer, on the other hand, was a close and very dear friend. She's actually the one who introduced me to Naruto's mom. And Raven. Yang knew her question was sudden because the two men didn't make a stand afterwards. The young blonde just looked down at her lap and shrugged. I already feel terrible, so I thought I might as well try. You and Dad never talk about her because you're worried what might happen. But I'm stuck here and hated by everyone, so whatever. That's emotional manipulation at its finest, kid. It doesn't mean it's not true. Minato looked over at Crow to see his aggravated expression. The blonde husband shrugged his shoulder. If you don't say anything, then I will. It's not your place to say anything, Minato. Family matters. Well, as someone who wanted nothing more in life than to hear news about my missing family, I think keeping it away from her is cruel. I know it is, and you're right. I don't want you to be the one to say it. Crow and Minato glared at each other before the dark-haired man stood up and the blonde stepped away. Crow knelt down beside Yang again. I know where Raven is. Yang stayed quiet and nodded. She wanted to say she was surprised, but she really wasn't. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she had already convinced herself that her father and uncle had some idea of where her mother disappeared to. In fact, I saw her not too long ago when I needed help with a job. Okay, that she wasn't prepared for. What? I reached out to her for information about a job I had to complete. I don't usually contact her unless I'm desperate, like really desperate, and I have no other choice to explore. I can't believe this. The young brawler was sparkling as she went lightheaded. You contacted her recently. You and Dad made it sound like she appeared off the face of the earth. But you've had an idea this whole time. What the hell, Crow? And don't you use the I didn't ask move because I've been asking since I was a toddler. I know. It's just every time you ask, I couldn't bring myself to tell you. Why not? Yang was angry again, but this time not of the world or the people accusing her of terrible actions. It was at her uncle and her father for keeping something like this secret for so long. She had wanted to know for years and spent so much time searching, but they knew all along and said nothing. Well, I met Raven again after all this time, just a few years ago. Yang turned on Minato when he spoke up from the side while leaning against their desk. It was just a few missions in after I started skiing. I was supposed to protect the shipment of dust and materials from Mr. out into the neighboring settlement. On the way, we were ambushed by a group of bandits that stole the supplies and nearly killed the crew. And at the head of it, all these years later, I recognized her as Raven because of all the weapons she wielded, and because of the weapon she wielded. And I knew she recognized me when she stepped in and tried to cut off my head. Ying's eyes slowly widened before she looked at Crow for answers. Her uncle didn't say anything and simply watched her reaction to Minto's story. Looking between them, she shook her head. What are you talking about? You were classmates, weren't you? Friends? That doesn't matter to Raven. None of that ever really changed anything about her. Crow whispered as Yang looked at him with abject horror in her eyes. If it did, she would have been here to mother you and stay with Tai. But instead, she went back to our tribe, became the leader, and started cutting a path of terror through Mistral. And Crow stood up and pulled out his flask. The reason we never told you about Raven, Yang, is because we didn't want to disappoint you. You think I could be any more disappointed in the mother that abandoned us after I was born? Yes, he said frankly as he screwed the top back on his drink. Because the idea of you seeing her for what she was and that it might change you in some way terrified Tai and me for years. You might be the toughest kid I know, and you are growing up now to hear it. But doesn't mean we're ready for you to see her for yourself. Her mind was racing. The sound of her heartbeat was throbbing in her ears as she registered everything she had heard. With a sigh, her face fell into her hands so she could muffle her groan. But after a few seconds, she looked back at the men. So she's Mistral. That's right. And if you want to see her, I'll take you. Maybe many here would be willing to offer some help from his big important organization too. Mitchell nodded his agreement. So if you still want to meet her, I'll be ready to take you. Yang's eyes showed more intent and focus than they had moments ago. I'm holding you to that. Hunting, do you think anyone wants to sleep with me? Emerald closed her eyes, took a deep breath to control her urge to kill, then turned to Mercury. Excuse you, I mean, I'm basically a darling of the media right now. He pointed his range at the news program once again, going over his meme and people reacting to it. And you know, there are always those people that talk about wanting to console and protect the victim. There's got to be like a few pretty ladies that saw what happened to me and want to baby me back to full health. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that before. It's gotta be true. Mercury spun the wrench around his fingers and got back to work. Somewhere out there's a pretty thing wanting to fix broken old Mercury. I think we both know you were broken way before that fight ever happened. The young assassin paused, looked down at the mechanical prosthetics going up to his knees, and then over at his partner. Do you mean that literally or metaphorically? Does it matter with you? That's enough, you two. Emerald set up at attention, and Mercury stopped his repairs as Cinder approached. As amusing as I find your back and forth, we should probably focus on tonight. Her fingers flicked across the screen as theirs lit up. I just sent you the link for the stream. Use that and it will go out across the entire internet without anyone being able to take it down. Cinder. Emerald looked at the message cautiously. You sent that to a lot of people? Yes, some of our models a lot will be positioned around Bell to record everything. We want eyes everywhere, and we want to make sure that the people don't miss anything. Cinder pocketed her device before looking over to the other girl that had taken her seat watching TV. You know, what about you? You know what you're doing tonight? The silent girl gently tiptoed with her finger over her palm. She followed that up by covering her mouth and then slowly running her fingers over her throat. Then she linked her hands together with her fingers pressed together like bars, and finally she locked her fingers together and made her hands fly away like a bird. Haha, yes, I'm sure he will be very pleased to see you again, but make sure he knows what it is he needs to do. When Neil tilted her head curiously, Cinder rolled her eyes. Mayhem as far as the eye can see. The mute grinned and nodded her head. Good. Any question for the night? I got one. Mercury tilted. He twirled. He scrolled around on the table. So if the Expendables are gonna handle streaming in the city, well, exactly. Our the door to the warehouse was knocked on in a pattern for them to recognize it as one of theirs. That still didn't stop Mercury, Emerald, and Neo from reaching for their weapons just in case something went wrong. Yet Cinder, emboldened by her success, boldly stepped up to the door and opened it, and she smiled warmly to her guest. Welcome to our little abode. Let us in. I'm terrified of any fuckers looking our way and getting an idea. Cinder stepped aside and opened the door, letting Karin and Jigo enter their hideout. The two girls were looking uncomfortable and sheepish to be in their den, while Jigo stood a little straighter and larger than he usually did. While the others lowered the weapons, Cinder circled around their associates. Is he ready? We've been conditioning him for days. Karin answered in a whisper, a haunted look in her eyes as Tagia stuck her hands in her pocket in silence. We did everything and anything we could. You haven't answered me. Cinder slowly walked past both of them and stopped in front of Jigo instead. She noticed that the boy that had shied away from the others and tried to not draw attention to himself was now standing tall and looking even larger. The baggy clothes he wore now looked like they were filling up something large and bulky. Drawing a knife from her belt, the blade started to superheat and turn white around the edges. Without saying a word, Cinder raised the blade up and pressed it into his cheek. Everyone watched, flinched, and panicked that she might trigger him, but Cinder only narrowed her eyes, and Jigo didn't react at all as part of his clothes burned through with the knife and touched his skin. She found it difficult to push a burning knife any further against him. With a grunt, she pressed as hard as she could and finally felt her knife move, only to see when she pulled it back that the blade had bunched up at the tip. You asked what you and Emerald were going to do tonight, Mercury. Cinder tossed the knife and looked back at her followers. Let me introduce you to the star of your show. Continue. It was hard not to notice the difference in the atmosphere around the fairgrounds compared to yesterday. And there were still people walking around and enjoying themselves at the booths, but the enjoyment was muted and duller than it was the day before. Just yesterday, people were having the time of their lives at the height of the festival, but now there was an air of uncertainty and trepidation about what had happened. Last night during the tournament, Sakura hadn't spent much time with Yang and her team since coming to Beacon, but she knew the girl was kind, considerate, and cared a great deal for those around her. So the sudden shock of her attacking that boy so brutally for all to see had unsettled her. The attack had been terrible, but the look of shock and horror on Yang's face as what happened started to dawn her just It broke Sakura's heart. It was terrible. It was terrible, and thinking that all these people were looking down at Yang made her angry. And she felt a familiar hand in her hair. I can see you thinking about it. The young apprentice looked up at her master as Tsunade pulled her hand back. We came to the fair today to take our minds off it. Remember? I know, Madam Tsunade. I apologize. And yet she still looked so downtrodden. Tsunade sighed and placed a comforting hand on her apprentice's shoulder to try and comfort her. The older fondness looked around the fairgrounds before she pointed at a little booth, gaining a bit of attention. Hey, Sakura, why don't you go see what all the fuss is about? Yes, ma'am. Sakura complied and walked over to see what was happening. And while she did that, Tsunade decided to not practice what she preached, and let her mind wander as well. But instead of the poor girl being dragged down by the world around her, the Huntress decided to focus on the victim instead. Or rather, the surprisingly lack of meaningful follow-up after such a terrible accident. Every story and article about the incident had gone into detail about what happened and how it had affected everyone, but none of them have been able to follow up with the victim to see how he'd been coping. Some stories rightfully say that he hadn't been able to gauge the full extent of his injury, while others made claims like his kneecaps had been torn open, or that amputation was necessary, and an exact report or diagnosis shouldn't be available to the public just yet, but nothing had been leaked. He was shipped back to Mitchell with his team to recover after his initial checkup, so no one could contact him while in transit. It seems standard and totally understandable, but also very convenient. Madam Tsunade, Sakura came running back with a slightly cheery attitude and 2 tickets in her hands. I guess it was some kind of lottery. You get a ticket and they roll a raffle to see who wins tickets to Mistral. Huh. Well, that's pointless. We live there. No, it's supposed to be some kind of spa retreat that's very exclusive and ritzy. Helps you unwind from all the trouble what the guy ran the lottery is to be believed. Well, of course, he says that. Tsunade and Sakura shared a little laugh as Sakura sat down beside her and gently squeezed the ticket in her hands. Tsunade patted her young ward's knees to get her out of her funk. Do you think you would like to come to a school like this? Beacon or Haven? Tsunade shrugged, thinking it didn't matter which, because before Sakura thought deeply. To be honest, I don't think I'd want to go to either. I don't think I was made to fight or ever really had the stomach for it. I always thought I could do more good for others by helping to fix them up or recover. No matter how I picture it, I don't think I want to be active in the battlefield like you were, Madam Tsunade. I understand. Tsunade sounded empathetic as she spoke with her young mentee. When I was your age, all I wanted was to be part of the fight, but also do what I could to help those injured. But as time went on, I lost that fire and found more purpose in studying medicine. There can be just as much good to be done with the skills like that as the skills needed to fight the grim. Don't ever lose the desire to help other people, okay, Sakura? At the end of the day, that will be the most important reason for making any change. Yes, ma'am. We have a winner, number 132. Come on over and claim your prize. Hold on. Sakura grabbed Tsunade's ticket before gasping. Madam Tsunade, you won the trip. Tsunade blinked in surprise. I won. Yeah, over here. We've got it. The vendor cheered and started to sound his bell. Sakura clapped joyfully. Things are looking up, ma'am. When we get back, we can, ma'am. Tsunade's eyes narrowed as she stared at her ticket. She lowered it to her side before looking up at Amity as it flew high over her head. Sakura, yes, I think you should stay in Beacon tonight. Hunting. It infuriates me that I could have bought every booth at this fair just last week, and now I can't even pay for a single cup of coffee. Weiss looked down and stirred her coffee gently before looking to her friend. Do you think the fact that I have no equity or savings anymore makes me destitute? You live at Beacon where you get food and board, so I don't think destitute quite covers it. Impoverished, maybe. Blake offered to ease her friend's mind as Weiss's frown deepened and she mumbled to herself about having to start saving again. The cat fondness let a small smile slip through her poor mood. Still goes on your father's calls. It's unrelenting. He's never called me this much, which means either he wants something from me, which I seriously doubt, or he wants to reestablish who he is to me and make sure I don't forget him. Well, why saw Blake's confused, appalled expression, nodded. Yes, it is as sad and pathetic as it sounds. So you're not giving him an opportunity to say anything to you. I know it's childish. No. It's fine. I didn't mean to sound like I'm judging you or anything. Blake quickly added, I understand dealing with someone overbearing and unwilling to respect your space, and considering the timing of his call, he most likely has words for me about Yang and my team. Blue eyes narrowed her head fiercely as Wise's face scrunched up in agitation. Probably something to say about how a snake shouldn't sully themselves by being interactive with brutes, or that he was right to suggest I stay in Atlas instead of coming to Pekin. He was just that kind of petty and arrogant man to use a terrible tragedy like this to compliment and bolster himself. If that's anything I might hear when I take his call, then I'm going to forgo the experience entirely. Then I guess I'll be paying for our tea and coffee for the foreseeable future. Well, I saw an tentative smile on Blake's face, trying to show some ease and pep despite how rubbish both must have felt. The black-clad girl held her cup to her friend. To ignoring your father. A small giggle slipped out as she raised her cup. To making it through this mess. They clinged their cups together and sipped, hoping that the trouble plaguing them and their teammates would soon disappear and simpler days would return. Weiss sipped her coffee and let it warm. Delicious taste ran through her system before she opened her eyes inside him. Speaking of mess, a real nice way to talk to your friends, Princess. Hey, Blake, Weiss. Naruto approached after spotting the two girls sitting at a booth in the crowd. How are you holding up after? We're all right, Weiss said evenly. Things were rather heated and confusing earlier, but now I don't think calmed down is the right phrase. We're all just tired, Blake offered instead. They all agreed that was the most appropriate term to use. The feelings of worry, doubt, and concern were still there, but they had become muted and dull after so many hours. After so many hours of being bombarded on all sides, they just wanted to close their eyes and block it out. Naruto shared a look before nodding and sitting with the girls. We can see why you feel like that. We stopped by your room earlier to talk to Yang and give her our best and tell her we're waiting for her to get out of that room. She seems okay. And after answered the question Blake and Weiss were about to voice, she said she talked with my dad and her uncle, and that calmed her down a little. Said she has something to look forward to after the tournament is over. Weiss tilted her head. She actually said that. Well, I'm glad to hear her mood has improved a bit. She still looked like she wanted to break her bed over someone's head. Her mood has improved, but I doubt she was going to feel settled even after whatever her uncle had to say to her. Looking around and noticing two people missing from the group, Weiss asked them, where are Sasuke and Tenten? Tenten went off to play some games and clear her mind, Kiba said, helping himself to a plate of biscuits between them. And Sasuke is swinging his sword out in the woods. He says he wants to get as much practice in as he can before the matches tonight. I think he wants to settle his nerves too. After last night, he wants to make sure nothing else. He doesn't want to worry people. He always acted cool and in truth he could keep calm better than most people. But even Sasuke had to click his mind and give himself time to prepare for whatever was ahead. Not to look over and saw how distant Blake looked before putting a hand on her shoulder. She turned to him. Have you figured out how you're going to work this out after the festival? Not yet. I know things will have to go back to normal when everyone leaves. But I have a feeling Yang has a long way to go before people look at her the same way. Blake closed her eyes as her fingers tightly gripped the handle of her cup. And the thought of people looking at her like that is... She paused when his arm wrapped around her shoulder and gently pulled her in for a one-armed hug. She didn't usually feel comfortable when people showed signs of affection like this, but after all this time, she just came to trust her friend's honest intention. Thank you. I don't know what comes after this, but we'll be here to lend a hand. The blonde promised, letting go and standing out of his chair. Will we see you both up there? And Blake sighed as Weiss shook her head. Not likely. We've had enough of fighting for this week, and we're taking a break. We'll just watch the finals from here. Now we gave Piro our best wishes for the fight ahead, but Kiba laughed. We'll give Sasuke your love and prayers, Princess. I said no such thing, but thank you anyway. Hunting. For the last few days, all it had been was tension and fear and indecision and responsibility that had shrouded her. She found herself suffocated by the choice ahead of her, and it gave her pause. For the first time in a long time, she was hesitating, and she remembered just how awful that felt. But right now, all she felt was content. She closed her eyes, let her breath flow from her chest, let the tension seep off of her shoulders, and rested her head gently on the shoulder offered to her. You're not gonna fall asleep, are you? No, just resting my eyes, Pierre whispered back as he chuckled beside her, and enjoying the moment. Glad to be of service. John said lightly, watching the red-haired warrior at his side relax for the first time all day. His eyes lingered down a little further to her hands, fingers entwined and gently squeezed in between the legs. He looked back at Pierre's content, peaceful expression with joy at seeing her finally acting like herself again. He squeezed her hand and felt her squeeze it back with a giant giggle. Nora and Rain we'll have a field day with this, right? I think it's only fair, Pierre said back, looking up at him with a big smile. We had a school year of dealing with them being around each other. I think we deserve a little discretion as well. Hey, you're right. John agreed, a light pink color coming to his cheeks at the implication that they were doing the same thing Nora and Ren had been doing all this time. Shaking his head, he decided to change the subject to something a little easier. So hey, after the festival's over, what should we do? I kind of want to go see a movie. We can invite Ren and Nora too, but if they're busy, he regretted bringing up the topic because her expression quickly changed, and her hand slipped out from his. What did he say? Could he still take it back? Pierre sat up a little straighter, looking out at the garden and the leaves that had started to redden and brown. Closing her eyes, she tried to clear her mind for a moment before asking, John, how long have you wanted to be a huntsman? I'm not sure. I think I've wanted since I was a kid. Would you say it was your destiny to be a huntsman? I'm not sure. I certainly wasn't cut out for it at first, but with your help, that's what I mean. When you come here, you weren't ready for the challenge ahead, but that didn't deter you, and you've worked long and hard since then to become someone that reaches closer to that ideal. A longing smile took her face as she shook her head. That's what I imagine when I think of destiny. Not something that was destined for you, but something you decide to reach. Yeah, that makes sense. I like how that sounds. So let me ask you. She turned to him, her long red hair billowing the soft wind that settled over them. If you had a chance to reach that ideal immediately, to become the huntsman that stands proudly in the face of evil and help everyone, would you take it? She saw him hesitate and mull the idea over in silence. After a moment, his mouth opened and closed in contemplation before shrugging his shoulder. It sounds too easy. Like there has to be a downside. Yes, there is. Pierre quickly nodded and looked ahead again. The downside is that when you become that ideal, when you become the person you've always wanted to be, there's no promise that the person you'll be is you. What do you mean? Or maybe everything you've worked for, the life you made, and the people you bond with, maybe they'll be taken from you, or maybe you'll forget about them. But if you don't do this, you could risk everything and everyone. Pierre, what are you? Isn't it my duty to help people? Shouldn't I strive to be the guardian no matter what the sacrifice? So then I should be able to do it. But I don't know what will happen to me if I do, and I can't handle that. Pierre, I don't know what to do. Pierre's hands slipped over her ears and entangled in her hair as she yelled, I don't know what to do. Pierre, what do I do? Her eyes snapped open in shock when she heard her partner groan in pain. She looked up and saw John pinned to the wall hard enough to crack it. A familiar black glow over his breastplate. A gasp slipped out of her mouth as she reined in her semblance in and let him drop to the ground. I'm sorry, Pierre, it's okay. Tears came to her eyes. I'm sorry, I'm fine. Seriously, I'm okay. I'm not hurt. I'm sorry, Pierre. Wait. She turned and ran away from John as he called out her name and begged her to stay. Pierre gritted her teeth and charged forward while tears pricked her eyes and clouded her vision. As she ran, her lungs burned because she couldn't take a full breath. The champion's feet caught against each other and she tumbled into the ground. She tried to pick herself up but paused, realizing she was wheezing and then sweat had started to form under her brow. With a stifled gasp, she circled her arms around herself and squeezed tightly. Pierre! The panic head snapped up towards the voice calling her name through the ringing in her ears. She looked at Tintin as her brunette friend watched her in shock. Quickly putting down her tub of popcorn, she knelt down at her side and reached for her shoulders. What happened? Why are you crying? Did something happen? Metal. What? Pierre focused on her semblance and felt no push of magnetism response from Tintin's body. Even so, she asked through her sobs, do you have any metal on you? No, I'm clean. Do you need it? Or Pierre dove forwards into her friend's embrace and hugged her tightly. As she rested her head on her chest, Tintin balked in shock and looked down as Pierre sobbed into her clothes and tried to catch her breath. Pyrrha, I don't know what to do. The invincible girl wept enveloped. Her cries muffled into her friend's clothes as her shoulders heaved. I hurt John, and I scared him, but I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Tintin didn't know what to say. She didn't know why her friend was crying or what could have done this to her. But the way she broke down and trembled in her arms felt wrong. And Pyrrha was just a person, but she had a stronger will and resolve than most anyone else. Whatever caused her to feel like this, it caused Tintin's blood to boil in anger. Hunting. Oh! Since Leg was restless as he waited to get called out on the stage with the rest of the finalists. The usually confident blonde actually had butterflies in his belly, both from excitement and worry. There were going to be a lot of eyes on them now after Yang and Mercury and the monkey funnies. They didn't want to be the one to add any more stress to the situation. Hey, do you think people are going to be angry tonight? The person by his side remained silent. I mean, I know they're not going to be angry at us, but I feel like they're going to be waiting for us to screw up or make a mistake. Like after what happened to Yang, they're certainly going to be watching every move we make with a microphone or something. Does that make sense? Gar simply stayed quiet and listened. Come on, man, don't leave me hanging. I was just waiting for you to say your piece. It looked like you wanted to clear your head. Gar said as Sun shrugged in agreement. You're right. They're going to be watching us and scrutinizing any follies we make. Their trust in us has wavered after last night, and it'll be up to us to prove to them. No, we can still be trusted with their future. But it was just an accident. Sun was firmly in the support Yang camp with the rest of his friends. From Beacon and believed what happened was simply a mistake and not a malicious attack. Couldn't we try to convince them that she didn't mean it and that we're still here to help them? Intention or desire hardly matter in the face of results and consequences. The people won't soon forget what they saw, so now we must show them that we can handle the worries and doubts. I'm sure Yang will recover in time, but right now our concern has to be mending the damaged relationship with the public and hoping that we can salvage it before things get any worse. Yang stared at the red-haired raccoon for several seconds before shaking his head. Dude, I don't know why I thought sitting next to you will calm me down. Pyrrha sat off to the side, her legs pulled up to her chest and her head tucked between her arms and knees. She must have looked so weak. She honestly felt even weaker. Right now she couldn't be as peppy as Penny, as distant as Yugetsu, or as contemplative as Sun and Gara. This was her moment to claim victory, bask in it with her friends, ease the pressure off of Yang, and have a moment that she had been craving since her team had formed and she had finally found a place to be comfortable. Instead she was miserable, and that feeling wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. Her heartbreak earlier had only been manageable because Tintin went silent when she said she didn't want to talk about it. That looked like it annoyed the bunny-haired fighter, but she stayed quiet and just held her close while she cried. Noan Ren had noticed how tired and red her eyes were, but didn't press for info, just hugging her closely and wishing her luck. And John, oh God, she still had to explain to John what happened. He must have been blaming himself for hours, thinking over what he said and if he offended her or insulted her, or why did she do that? Or why to him of all people? Pyrrha heard soft footsteps stop just beside her as she sat by the wall. She didn't look up and didn't need to as the person placed his sword aside and slid down the wall to join her. Pyrrha whispered in her hoarse voice, "Did Tintin tell you? She told me something was wrong, but she didn't know." Sasuke said, "Something about being confused and not sure what to do. It was all she was talking about." The girl lifted her head and wiped her nose. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother her. You did, and I don't think she cares that you worried her. I think she just cares that you feel better." Huh? Pyrrha chuckled. "She's a really good friend. She is. So can you not tell us what's bothering you?" "I can't." She looked at Sasuke and shook her head. "I'm not trying to be difficult or reserved, but I can't tell you what it is. I'm sorry." Her peers sat beside her silently and didn't press her for more information. Thankfully for how quiet and mindful she was being, while wiping a strand of hair out of her eyes, she whispered in shaky voice, "Do you mind if I ask you something?" He didn't refuse as she continued. "Have you ever had an image of yourself that you wanted to reach more than anything else?" "I had an image I thought I could reach by convincing myself I needed to change myself, but I realized that's not how I wanted wanted to reach it. I've had an image of myself as a huntress in my mind for so many years. I can't remember if or when I didn't. In that image, I've made myself into a huntress that saves the people around me and inspires them to believe that things can be better. The desire has become so engraved in me that I've convinced myself it is my desire to become a huntress. So what happened? I've been given an opportunity, because honestly that was the only term she felt comfortable to use for this, to become that kind of huntress, one strong enough to face any evil, one trusted enough to be relied on by others, and one good enough that I can protect all the people I love and cherish. This is a chance for me to reach that goal I've dreamed for myself. The only problem is that if I did it, I don't think that would be me anymore. What do you? But I could help people, probably far more than I ever could just by myself, and I might still be myself at the end of it, but it's not guaranteed. It's also uncertain and nascent, and I don't know what to do. Pia, do you honestly believe you won't realize your destiny without this chance? Pia showed her friend her rimmed eyes as she turned to him. Oh, what? You make it sound like this is your only chance to become the wonderful huntress you've aspired to be, but you couldn't be further from the truth. You've already become a magnificent huntress in everything but title. Her eyes widened in surprise as the Chica continued. I know you hate being put on a pedestal, but I mean that your honor, your kindness, your sincerity and compassion, it's all that people look for in a country system, but rarely ever find. And you've already inspired the people closest to you to become more and believe in themselves. Let them strive for strength so she could stand by your side. Joanna has taken leaps and bounds to become a capable huntsman. Even I have a clear image of the man I would like to be when compared to you. You might be fretting about becoming the huntress you were destined to be. I believe you have yet to realize you're already becoming that person. Pia stared at her friend in shocked silence as what he said ran through her mind. The image of John, Nora, Ren, Tintin, and all her other friends looking at her and smiling. It was one of the biggest reasons that she was scared of the idea that she would lose herself if she followed through with this. But maybe she was just panicking. It was hard to admit, but if she had been so terrified by the idea these past few days, that perhaps she wasn't ready for this. She didn't have to take this power. It wasn't reliant solely on her to carry this burden. She wouldn't be the perfect huntress, but maybe she was a bit closer to the ideal than she had expected. A tone went off in the room, signifying that it was almost time for their fights. Tadin was the first up on her feet and beamed a bright, energetic smile. It is time for us to go out and face off, dear friends. Oh, I'm so excited to be able to engage with you on the combat. Sure, enjoying the fact you'll get to knock us around, kid. I'm just looking forward to the chance to enjoy our time together. The joyful, freckled girl grinned and bounced on her feet. I am combat ready, and I can't wait to claim the win. Hunting. A boot sharply kicked the pink crystals jutting out of the dirt and pointing toward the forest. Stop kicking them. I'm worried I'm going to break your shit. I just don't want your dirty boots stains over it. They're supposed to be a defense against the grim, not your personal kick stance. Oh, piss off. Data groaned as he stuffed his hands in his pocket and patrolled the perimeter of Vale with his partner. I can't believe we got stuck on board duty. After the surge of Grim yesterday, can you blame them for worrying? Gurren countered as she and her blonde cohort walked along the edge of the city with several Atlas soldiers to help with the patrol. What would you have rather done? And before you say anything, don't say anything about complaining to work for the military or blowing stuff up. Well, you've just put me in a box, haven't you? The explosive expert looked around and spotted the other soldiers crowding around one with his scroll out. Oh, look, the soldiers are distracted with their little devices. So why I hate being here. What did I just tell you? Gurren shook her head and marched over to the soldiers. You know we're supposed to be on duty, right? Data rolled his eyes and looked at the makeshift defenses they made between the city and the forest. With a shake of his head, he wondered if that fiery little blonde he knocked out some months ago back would snap his leg in retaliation like she did that other boy. He sighed and yawned into his mouth. Until he heard a low rumble and howls in the distance. His hands lowered and eyes narrowed suspiciously. Hey, Gurren, did you hear that? He waited for a return from his partner, but all he got was silence. Turning around, he spotted Gurren standing around the others and watching the scroll. Hey, what the hell are you? Other sounds died in their voice. With that mighty roar echoing through the air, Gurren, Data, and the others Atlas soldiers looked up at the sky as they saw darkness approach, and then looked down when the screen of the scroll showed a black chess piece. Are you surprised? Surely, it's the fact that Atlas has started to interrogate robots in their list of students really that shocking? Or for as long as we can remember, Atlas has closeted itself away from others at the top of the world. Literally, should we not expect them to decide that people are obsolete and move on to create machines to blend in with our children? The rumbling grew even more pronounced, and the trees outside the Vale started to shake. The Atlas guard slowly stepped back as they heard the sound of a stampede charging their way. Some bear-wolves and barber-tusks breached the line first and pierced themselves against the pink crystal spikes along the perimeter. But those defenses quickly turned obsolete as bodies were thrown at them without pause until so many had died that other Grimm were using them to let themselves up. Retreat! Daryl yelled throughout his hand, and burning a group of Grimm in his explosion. But the numbers were too much, and they ran back to the city with the horde of Grimm on their tail. Hunting, it was inevitable if you think about it. We give power and influence to these great men, hoping they'll make the right decision for us. But at the end of the day, that's all they are. Men. Fools and hypocrites that try to reach for more and make decisions they think are right, damning all those that get in their way or dare to speak against him. We gave one such man the power to guide both our next generation of warriors, and an army. He readily accepts those warriors into without shame. Time to move out, Roshi announced to their followers as they hopped themselves up and took their weapons. Make sure to leave a mark. The people will never forget. Krishna fastened her mask to her face, letting her features disappear once more behind her lifeless mask. Time to become the enemy of mankind she was always groomed to be. Hunting, but he is hardly the only one who has committed such egregious fallacies over the years. Headmaster Osman has painted himself as a figure of restraint and control to the public, and yet it has been his students that committed such atrocities these past few days. He is an arrogant figurehead who refuses to practice the actions that he preaches, and a failure who hasn't been able to stop the attacks from criminals White Fang and Grimm that have plagued his backyard so close to home. He couldn't hide the smile pulling at his mask. This was it. The opportunity he had been looking forward to his whole life. The chance to change the world. The grip around his sword tightened. The Grimm in his storage compartment raged and hollered, and Adam couldn't stop thinking to himself of all the way he was going to say hello to his old friend. Hunting, and I promise you, Mistral is no better than the school situated in the largest kingdom in Vermont, and yet they have done nothing to face the vast growing underbelly that festers in the shadows of their culture. More huntsmen and huntresses turn to the life of crime and complacency there than anywhere else in the world, almost as if they have been bred for failure and treachery. Man, she can really yap, can't she? The silent girl looked at the king encouragingly and raised her brow. Well, in my case, I have a great voice and interesting stuff to say, better than she does at least. Near shrugged in agreement to his point. She then pointed back at the cells that she had locked him from, and then pointed to me, and then motioned that maybe they should keep walking. Neil, as much as enjoy your ruthlessness, we need him. Roman patted down his pocket and realized that his cigars were gone. With a groan, he turned back to his partner. He's an integral part of the plan. The mixed-haired girl tilted her head and showed data. If he isn't around to cause havoc and mayhem, then we'll get saddled with it instead. And we're much better behind the scenes. She couldn't argue with him there. With a pep in her step, she skipped over to a large cell and bent down to the body outside it. She grabbed the key card, cleaned it of stray blood on the strip, and then swiped it through. The door clicked open with a metallic hiss and spread wide enough for its occupant to walk out. As he did, the metal and dust restraints over his body collapsed to the ground. He rolled his neck with a pleasant crack and nodded him. About time we finally got out. Ha! Baby, it's so good to see you again. No, thank you. Neil pouted and looked up at the gargantuan horse of fondness as she waited for some appreciation. The noble guard just shook his head and walked by her. Jesus, some people could be so rude. Neil kicked the corpse that she had made and stomped off after them, hunting. In fact, have any of us ever believed that we can trust our sister kingdom in times of crisis? How can we help our future protector? How can we hope our future protectors to learn that what's right and wrong in a kingdom where thieves, bandits, and crime are a mainstay of existence there? What kind of hunters do we hope to expect to come out of there? What kind of monstrosities and evils have already made their home there? Master, are you prepared? Oh, I'm fine. The lanky, pale man chuckled as he rotated his shoulders and lifted his legs. The mechanical brace on his injured leg whirled and hissed as he tried to get feeling back in it. It had been a long time since he put pressure on it, but it was about time to stretch his legs out again after so many years. How about you, go? Kimura looked over at what remained of his former friend as he started to buck and yearn for the wealth of negativity outside. The white-haired boy nodded. He's ready, sir. Wonderful. Then let's go out and let him have fun. Hunting. Once upon a time, we believed these schools and establishments to be our hope and saviors in trying times. After the terror of the war, it was a comforting thought to believe we would see heroes and warriors forged to steel and honor, taking up the cause to protect us. But now that dream has withered and faded, and it has become painfully clear that the only thing we can expect from these schools is more soldiers and killers ready to fight. No. Ruby barreled to the door and stumbled on her feet before toppling over. The hooded girl stumbled over the ground, both to try and escape her pursuer and see if she could stop things before it was too late. But when she got to the edge of the corridor, she saw the stage and she saw what had become of her friend. Tears welling up as she sobbed. No. Man, I don't think I had to get involved at all. Mercury chuckled behind her as he spotted the panic and carnage running through the audience. He looked back down at the weeping young hunters before chuckling and soaring away. And the fun is just beginning. Hunting. She killed her. No. She was a robot. She wasn't real. But she was. She smiled and had her name and talked with her. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. Pyrrha dropped to her knees and gasped for breath as her mind started to get lost in a whirlwind of contractions and confusion. With a shaky gasp and tear eyes, the young huntress looked over at Penny. She stared into the lifeless eyes that stared back at her, and the several pieces she had reduced the girl into in a moment of panic and brutality. We may be on the precipice of a new war between our kingdoms, and our children have been groomed into the fodder and stock that will fight it. When your cities collapse in the fire, when your walls crumble, when the grim besiege your world, and you ask why, look back to this day and ask yourself how you didn't see it sooner. Roars and screeches sounded out everywhere around them as Grimm swarmed Amity. As her world toppled down on its foundations, the rest of the world had started to burn, and it was all her fault. End of chapter 79.